Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your World show. I am your co-host, Chris Alba. Larkin's going to be joining us shortly. She got caught up with her schedule and her horses, so she's going to be a few minutes delayed. But we're going to get started. It's 12:30, so we are really late for our 12 o'clock broadcast. So we're going to get started. Today we're going to talk about shifting your reality. And this is a fascinating topic. I think, if I could look back into my own reality and my own life, that was something that I was always looking to do, find comfort in the now while creating the habits and the actions to manifest a more enhanced future. And it can be challenging because it's a process of growth. And what a lot of, I believe, we've been marketed to, because it sells way more than the truth does. And that's that growth is about just moving forward more, and that progressiveness does bring in new results, but yet we'll get tend to, and this has been my experience, run into patterns, run into cycles or things that are relatable through different experiences. Even though each moment is unique, there's some commonalities in our experiences. And I think that's where the surrender comes from, of the ego. It's not surrender circumstances, not surrender the people in our lives, the resources that we have, our community, because in my view, we are all unified consciousness and we share this moment. Each moment of the now is always present, but it's always changing, always shifting based on our experiences, the things that help shape us, our memories, the rights and wrongs that we're keeping score of. And when we talk about raising our Kundalini energy, that happens through a process of releasing stagnant energy. And that is, mental energy, that's emotional energy, that's sexual energy. And when we can clear these blocks within us, the things that believe in lack, the things that believe in, I heard someone say it today, you don't have, there's no such thing as you don't have trust. You trust in the lack of trust. Because if you truly trust, there is no lesser than that. You're either going to be open, you're going to be vulnerable, you're going to be inclusive, you're going to want to progress forward shoulder to shoulder with the people that you're walking with, or you're going to choose to follow your own path of identity, which is your ego. And there's billions of ways to do that, and that's why we all look differently, because we're all a different vibration. And we can create these universal teachings, that we've all followed for so many years and so many people believe in, to the point that they're blinded to the truth. That, as Jesus said, as all the ascended master said, the kingdom is from within. The Pope going on record and saying that hell isn't a place, but a place within you. Paraphrasing there, of course. But it's our own created limitations. It's the own, when we turn on the television, if we understand that everything that's being fed to us is a form of entertainment, and it's going to create subconscious and unconscious thoughts and unconscious beliefs that are going to help us move towards or away from something. And that's where the conspiracy people will call people sheeple and things like that, because they're moving with the trend of whatever media is talking about. And I think we've shared this on this podcast before, but there's like 6 or 8 media corporations that control, everything that that we're influenced by, and that helps create this man-made society that we've created. So we're talking about shifting your reality, and the way to do that is to disconnect from all that, to surrender all that, to unify your six senses, which is the physical senses. I mean, we have way more than six senses, but I'm making a, simplifying a little bit. Unifying the senses of what is beyond physical reality with our physical reality, our five senses. There's a great practice that we teach, and Greg Braden talks about it in his show and things like that. And it's about working to create unity or coherence between the mind and the heart, and being able to discern between the differences of those frequency vibrations. And when we are in thought, it moves very rapidly. There's story behind it. There's justifications. There's excuses. There's defensiveness. There's all these things. Where the heart just really speaks, a very straight line, like, this is the path to go. You quit smoking, is just an example. You'd be better off if you let go of these things, because they're not bringing you joy like you think they are. They are limiting your expression of self in these different ways. And when we start to tune into ourselves and say, okay, the truth comes from within. How am I living in integrity with myself? Not my relationships, not but with myself, because it starts here. And then the outward manifestations, the reflections that we see in our life, show us where we have not yet put the light of awareness to heal it, to let it fester. And, it's just like if we were to not maintain our energy, what happens to it? It goes all over the place. That's why people are very stuck in their routines, because they feel like that's the most effective use of their energy, and it's true based on their identity. And it's by surrendering that identity that you can shift your reality, shift into another timeline. When you stop beating yourself up with shame, guilt, fear, insecurities, and start saying, how can I live the best way within this present moment for myself and all those that I serve beyond me? Because all the people beyond me are extensions of me, because we are one consciousness. The foods that we eat are part of the same consciousness. That's why it's important that our relationship with the things that we're putting in our mouth, we have a quality relationship with. And so when we just eat stuff because we're hungry, is that a quality relationship with the foods that we're eating? Probably not as high as if you're personally growing it, praying over it, thanking it for its nutrients and sustenance, so you can continue your life into the future. And even having the scientific data now of fasting and how good it is for us, as far as our bodies, giving our bodies time to detox themselves. This will shift your reality to the way you incorporate food in your life. When you understand that our body is just it's from my perspective, my opinion, that our body is a filter, and it filters what we consume with our senses, and our skin, and pushing all the things out so it can run efficiently. And the more we allow for the awareness that we are nature. We are natural beings, with a different level of consciousness than, say, a deer or a bird or a rock or a tree or a blade of grass, whatever. Um, that's where the spiritual practices come in and want to teach this, right? So we can be aware of the interconnectedness of all things, and the things that we own and possess, the material things, all those different things, they only provide us meaning based on the meaning that we create for it. So if it's useful for our life, then we covet it and we value it. And the things that we don't necessarily feel are important can usually sit in a drawer for years and never be used or discovered, or until you need it. And then you're like, oh, look, cool, I got this tool, I got this thing. And then you can use it. And we do that in so many different ways, with the relationships that we have with ourselves, and other people. And other people in our reality is invaluable. I know that the big shift right now and the topic right now is about the individual, and it only matters about ourselves, and if people aren't vibing with us, then we are to let them go. But how is that unconditional love? Okay, I understand gaining space. How is it unconditional love? Have you ever been in a rough spot in your life and you were afraid to ask for help, to reach out, to just share what was going on in your mind or your heart with somebody, and then you called them up and they didn't hold space for you? How did that feel for you? Did you have a really challenging circumstance in your life and you reached out for assistance and help because it was more than you could bear? Whether it was mental, emotional, sexual, physical, however you want to look at the energies, because the energies go beyond the labels. How did that make you feel? You were already feeling overwhelmed. You were already feeling burdened. You were already feeling like you're not enough, or, things are just so hard that you had to ask for help because you couldn't handle it yourself. And then when you did, there was no one there to give you assistance. How does that feel versus the opposite, which is someone say, yeah, I got time for you. What's going on? Do you want to meet for a coffee? Do you need to just share now? Do you want some advice, some insight, some different perspective? How can I show up for you? Can I help you with your daily chores? Can I help you, move? Can I help you do this? Can I help you? However I can show up for you, I would love for my presence to be there to help be in that vibration of love, of acceptance, of uplifting energy, of nurturing energy, of loving energy. I want to be that vibration. And if you start looking at things more in that light, your reality is going to shift. It's not that complicated. I love going to all these healing events. Why? Because it shifts my reality, even if it's just for a short period. And the more consistent that I show up to these things, the more I'm creating new neural networks through neuroplasticity, which is creating a new reality for me. By the way I think, by the way I feel, by the way I respond to life. When I used to think I had to control everything, I was a lot more aggressive than I was in my day now, realizing that the only thing I can control is myself. And I just want to show up the best version of myself in challenging circumstances and in good circumstances, right? That's easy to show up in fully and really enjoy the joy. But where can we find the joy in the challenge, in the growth periods of our life? As somebody that walked with addictions, as a cocaine addict, as a drinker, all those things, I knew I had to hit rock bottom. And when I did, that was the best place for me to create a firm foundation. It didn't matter if the redirection came from heartbreak or some kind of physical experience that was beyond my control. But it all came from within here. And the more open I was to the redirection, the more willing that I was willing to put my energy into the recreation of my life, the better my life got. And I don't know how else to share these stories of how if I had your stories, I would love. I used to do this podcast previously, and it was about sharing stories about how we as individuals overcame the challenges in our life. So I would love to hear from some people that had addictions or some rough patches where they had to surrender their identity of who they were being, how life was treating them, all those different things to be able to find their light of awareness and move from that lower state of vibration into where they are today. And how do they think and feel and act differently now than they did back then? And I guarantee you it's going to have polarity to it. Because most of us that go through some challenging times, it's hard for us to be that wild and open again. That trusting again, it's challenging. And then when you realize that the stories that you continue to tell are only keeping you stuck in that reality, how can you shift that story? And it can look however it needs to look. You are the creator of your co-creator, because there is a collective energy. So we can feel things that we don't understand why we're feeling them, and it's because we are all one energy. And we all have individual perspective realities, right? And through those challenges, we learn our commonalities and strengths as individuals and as the community of human beings. When I was a sales trainer, oh, there's Larkin. We used to have the mantra, some will, some what, so some won't, so what? And that was so we didn't get hung up on the mental, emotional energy that kept us from going out and seeking the people that were ready for the opportunity, that were looking for what we had to offer. Because you can't force anything in life. You can force someone into a decision, but then later on, if there's a cancellation policy, they're going to cancel because they weren't fully ready yet. So we're spending a lot of energy trying to make the outside reality match what we want to feel inside, rather than allow the inside to narrate what we're experiencing on the outside. Hey, Larkin, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little slow on my end, but you're coming through.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Larkin? Technology, isn't it awesome? Are you there, Larkin? Okay, apparently Larkin's going to have to work on our technology. And,
Good. All right. Works today.
There you are.
I can hear you just fine.
Wonderful.
I'm right here. Yep, I'm right here. Oh, here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Sorry,
right.
you were saying?
I had finished my thought before I said anything to you, and
Oh,
it's really, what I guess thought of of this show was to share the perspective that we shift our reality by how we come from the inside out rather than allow the outside to influence us on what our truth is.
absolutely. I think that's very well said. Very well said. I think that's why my focus in coaching has always been authenticity. How important it is that people are manifesting authentically.
Right.
And why all these other lives that we do where we are constantly sharing about being your gatekeeper of your mind and making sure that you're aware of what's coming in and how it's influencing you, and you're choosing what you're exposed to, and you're choosing the meaning that you're giving things, or at least being aware of the meaning you've given things that aren't serving you, right? Or I don't even want to say aren't serving you, but aren't serving the best version of you and your role in the world. If we look at it beyond just you know thinking about yourself, I believe that as you're talking about from the inside out, that's exactly how I described it as well. And we have to remember that our world is a reflection of our inner world, of our inner state. So when we want the outer world to shift, we have to shift the inner world.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a world that doesn't teach that. We're in a world that does not emphasize that. It emphasizes kind of changing everything on the outside, trying to get things outside of yourself, force them to shift or change. And that's not how it works. So it leads us into no-win situations all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when you focus on learning about yourself, about self-awareness, then you become aware of the world. When you become aware of your own thoughts and your own feelings, then you can become more aware and understand others better. And so it's really, I think everything is kind of backwards and inside out. We're taught the opposite, but really if we start with us and work our way out, we apply self-control to us. We apply self-awareness to us. We apply radical responsibility to ourselves. Then what happens is the outer world can shift for us more easily versus we're taught to control or blame everything outside of yourself. Right. And then you end up miserable and unhappy. And so I think that's a huge distinction and very significant to make note of for those of you taking notes and really taking this seriously. There's kind of a reversal that has to happen there, a reversal.
Yeah, and it's challenging because the outside world is always barking at us, right? Like the television, the media, they're saying this is important, this is important, this is important. But what they don't really share with us is what is actually important.
Exactly.
They're sharing things that are momentary blips. Just on social media, all the memes about, and I'm ignorant in this. I don't watch the Olympics because it doesn't matter to me. I'm not an athlete, and it's beyond, and that's just my thing. But whatever happened in the opening ceremony or whatever, people were all outraged about. And there's all these posts and all these things about it, and it's like it's just one show, people. Like what really is more important? What's going on in this one thing, or what were those of what's actually going on in the world? Like are people um you know given the resources or provided the resources, because we're going to say that because of control, right? Because there's definitely laws and things that restrict us from being able to fully express ourselves, or to because of fear of harm in other people. And then also the resources,
Right.
like, when I was a kid, it wasn't uncommon for us to be walking through a neighborhood, seeing a fruit tree, and not think twice about picking a fruit off the tree,
Yeah.
And nowadays people would probably shoot you over. That's my apple tree. That's my apple you're taking from me. Like, how dare you? And you're like, well, there's hundreds of apples on this tree. This one, but like, that's how rigid we've gotten as a people. Is it's like, like, you're trespassing on my mental and emotional well-being. Well, who's in control of that? Like, who you're welcome for the teaching. And yes, it's challenging for me when people are challenging in my life too. I just turn it around to look at it and go, if the challenge lives within me, it's me. Not that this person is yelling, not that this person is like, I have absolutely no control over the reaction of this person. Maybe I had some influence to it, if we were in a conversation or a debate, or however you want to look at it. But the reality is those emotions are coming up because they needed to be expressed. And if I can hold space for that person to express that energy, by the time we're done with this conversation, we will be both better because of it. One, because I've been able to be able to hold space with grace and understanding and compassion, which leads us to an authentic connection, not just the connection of our identity, not just how we could serve the benefit of one another, but true, authentic connection as a human being, as an animal, as one, and really from there, the sky's the limit, based on our level of communication and commitment with towards one another and ourselves. Because I've definitely been in states in my life where I'm like, I'm not ready to do this. Like, I just don't have it in me. I'm not ready, whatever. And passed on opportunities, and then also stepped into opportunities, said, well, I'm not ready, but I got it for me to be ready. I got to step towards it. I got to go towards it. I got to prepare myself. I need to speak more. I got to, whatever it might be. But truly holding a space of integrity, not only for myself to be able to show up how I need to show up, without feeling the need to react from old ways, but being able to respond with presence and understanding that while I'm experiencing and feeling an emotional state, that is totally natural, totally needed. But how I use that energy to project outwardly is what causes harm. So if I can, not poke someone with a fiery stick, I'm not going to hurt them as bad. You know what I mean? If I'm in an emotional anger, or, a lot of times when we're in sadness, we'll just kind of, the character Eeyore comes into play. Oh, it just is what it is. And I'm still breaking past those cycles. I'll be 100% transparent. It's easy to get discouraged in our realities, in our collective reality sometimes, because there's a lot going on to help us wake up as a humanity. And it's challenging to understand, and challenging for me to understand that not everybody sees it. So
I think there's something very interesting too. I mean, there's lots of things that you said there, but one of the things I think is very pertinent that you said was the concept of being ready, you know?
Right.
And I gave up that concept a long time ago, at least 10 or 15 years ago. I'd have to really go back
Right.
in my journals to remember when. But I remember hearing that, you know, being ready is also relates to your comfort zones.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you guys think of it this way, and you think about maybe your fear of getting out of comfort zones, or, you know, the comfort zones you've chosen not to get out of, and so that's why you now feel stuck, or how opportunities and aspects of life have passed you by because you didn't want to get out of those comfort zones. And oftentimes we don't recognize comfort zones as comfort zones. But the reason we don't get out of comfort zones, we have lots of them, but one of them is we say, well, we're not ready yet. We're either a perfectionist and things have to be a certain way first. We have to feel like everything's in order and everything's, you know, all lined up for things to be the way they want it to be. Or we're waiting for the right signs to say it's okay, you know, or we don't feel good enough about ourselves and we're constantly feeling that we have to, you know, get this done first. Or, you know, with my clients that were business owners, it was, I have to have this many testimonials first, myself included. I have to have the website perfect first. I have to have a newsletter first. And what happens is there will always be something else, some reason that you don't feel ready for something.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we do say, okay, I'm ready. And we're not, you know, like, you know, I'm ready to swing the English Channel. I'm ready to climb Mount Everest.
Right.
You can feel ready, guys, and it doesn't mean you are.
Right.
You can think or believe you're ready, and it doesn't mean you are. But the same also happens in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Most often when we say, if it's a situation where we're just, our egoic mind is just choosing to make sure we don't create change and transformation, to make sure that we don't get out of our comfort zone. In those cases, you'll find yourself saying, well, I'm just not ready yet. And what you want to look for is a pattern. Is the pattern of, okay, has it been 6 months or more and I haven't done anything with my business? Then that means there's a comfort zone you're not getting out of.
Mm-hmm.
There's something you believe you're not ready for and you're waiting for something else. Those are things outside of yourself, right? So I think that concept you brought up, Chris, is really important, because most of what we look at in life, guys, you're not ready for it until you do it, because it's out of your comfort zone, right? I mean,
well, yeah, and then the mind doesn't even. Then you look back like, wow, I did it. Like there's no story leading up to making the leap of faith. You just take the leap of faith and then find out what's on the other side. And sometimes it's a bed of feathers, and other times not.
The thing is that you really have to. I mean,
right.
I missed out on a lot of opportunities in my life because I did that. Because right. I always thought I like to be prepared. You know, I was trained in outdoor survival. To always be prepared. Right. Well, okay, you can only wait so long for things, and life goes by.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't matter if you've started a degree and not finished it, if it was about a relationship, it doesn't matter what it was. Always keep in mind that the now is all that exists. And I'm not saying rush into everything blindly, leap into everything. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying if you take a look at the patterns in your life and you feel like your life is moving slowly or things take you forever, you know, which was always my challenge. You're always the last to do things. Keep in mind that maybe you're that person who's overly cautious, like I was. Maybe you're that person that didn't take risks. I mean, like for me, I still am, but you wouldn't know it. I was very, 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 very shy. I mean, like exceedingly shy. And so there were so many things that, you know, you don't think it's a big deal, but I look back at my school years and I see the things my friends did that allowed them to be vulnerable, that were embarrassing to them at the time, that were terrifying to me. But those little things they did as kids that I didn't do allowed them to do bigger things as adults that matched their age. See? So it is important. Just, you know, keep an eye out for your patterns. Make sure that you're not always saying, well, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. Because the truth is, guys, you're never ready until you do it. Anything that's out of your comfort zone is new. There always has to be a first time. And so when is that first time going to be? And if it's not now and you leave this world tomorrow, you will have never done it. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And see, like you know, most of my life I've been led by my heart. So I was always taking the leaps.
Me too.
And not necessarily educated ones. And you know, it's put me into some, you know, spaces, which, you know, now that I am where I am, I'm grateful that I survived them and I went through them and I experienced them. And, you know, it gives me, you know, a lot of understanding for how people who grew up feeling disempowered continued to do that as adults, and how to, you know, move through that invisible fence of discomfort. Because, you know, that's the way you know, when I first became a motivational speaker, it was one of the first, like, oh, this is the coolest, you know, story is the, you know, the invisible fence of your comfort zone. And, you know, the story I would tell is the day that we installed this for my dog, my ex-wife and I both put on the collar and ran through the fence, because we wanted to feel it. I wanted to know what I was doing to my dog. And then I did it. And of course, then I had to talk her into it, you know, because I just did something stupid and it hurt. and I wanted to see if she would do it. And she did it too. And we all laughed about it. But, you know, later on, you know, a decade later, I was writing about, you know, the invisible fence of our comfort zone. And that's exactly what it feels like. It keeps us contained to the safety of what we've known. It keeps us to our yard. And anytime we try to journey outside of that yard, we get a little beep, which is a warning, which is a lot of times people say is their intuition, you know, saying, hey, warning, you know, be on guard. And usually, you know, that's our identity afraid of having to be re-identified. But then we go through the shock of it, and then the things fall away from us, our friends, everything we've known, the habits that, you know, provided us comfort, you know, and it can be as simple as the soda you're drinking or the foods that we like to eat for dessert, or, you know, but when we can change those little things, you know, 1 degree shifts, then eventually we're going to make a whole 180, you know, and then of course the medicine wheel says we do a whole full 360, and we just keep spiraling up, right? But it's taking those small things that are easier to manipulate. This is my view, my opinion, how I quit some of the most destructive things in my life, including, you know, my negative self-talk, have come through very small shifts, very small and intentional chisels, you know, and you know, instead of waking up every day and saying, I'm going to do 100 push-ups, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to do 25 push-ups. I'm going to sit 20 minutes in my, you know, infrared sauna, you know, and I'm going to do, you know, whatever it is in your life to help you feel better about your life. Those are the things that we move through. It's not necessarily, I'm going to drop all my destructive habits, all my destructive friends, all my negative influences, just like that, because I did a cord cutting ceremony on a full moon. So that's the way it is. And now I'm going to stay identified to that fact that it doesn't exist, even though those thoughts, feelings, are still haunting me subconsciously in my waking life and in my dream state. You know, because those are things that keep us going back towards the things that bring us comfort, because they keep revisiting us. And at least that's my story, my experience.
I think you're on fire today, Chris. I think I think these points are so pertinent, and I do want to interject and say, like, I mean, Chris has always followed his heart, but so have I. So
Right.
for those of you listening to this, understand that whether you were a more cautious person or whether you were a just, you know, leap in person, you know, that is an indicator as to whether you were following your heart or not. Everyone can respond to it differently.
Mm-hmm.
But this idea of, I think this is so common, Chris, what you're saying. I find this with all of my coaching clients, that because we're in a world of immediate gratification and grandiose ideas of everything, we don't even realize we're doing it. But you're right. We get up and we're like, oh my God, if I can't do 1,000 push-ups by next week, you know, and, you know, Chris reminds me to remind you through this, like, everything is habits and repetition. Everything. You know, I was just talking to people last night, and we were talking about how we have this really unrealistic, I don't like that term, but unrealistic idea of reality that we don't realize we've been creating the reality we have now for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. It's had a momentum that's going in a particular direction in certain areas of our lives that we're not aware of. Mm-hmm. Through our thoughts, beliefs, feelings, actions, the habits of all those things, our choices. But then when we decide we want to fix it, or we're desperate, or we pay someone to help us, we measure our success by how quickly it happens. And then we think we're a failure. And so, you know, I sort of take what Chris said and I'm summarizing it, and I'm asking you, like, would you expect that of someone else? If it took somebody, you know, 30 years to, you know, become extremely overweight and unhealthy due to diet and lack of exercise, let's say that was the cause. Maybe they had a desk job. They didn't have time to exercise. They were always in a hurry and constantly eating fast food. They did this for 30 years out of the goodness of their heart. Maybe they were working to take care of their family. And then all of a sudden they decide, well, I'm going to go to Weight Watchers. And within 3 months, I should lose 200 pounds. I should look like a supermodel in a magazine. I should be able to run a mini marathon. You know, that may be a little extreme, but this is what people are doing. This is what all of us do to some extent. So we have to remember that any change and transformation that we want, we first have to slow down or stop the momentum of what we're still already creating. Because when you're wanting to create transformation or major change or manifest something differently and you want your life to change, you can't just turn a train around that's going 200 miles an hour. It has to slow down the whole train. The momentum, the way it's going, the track it's on, you have to slow down. You have to find where it veers off, where you can unload some cars and add other cars, where you can turn around if you want to go a different direction. In other words, it's all a process. So don't look at where you are and panic and then be like, but it has to change this fast, because guess what? Your reality didn't happen as quickly as you think it did. Mm-hmm. It's been up and coming. And so this is why Chris and I work with the, you know, from the inside out, we're sharing with you the mindset work, the energy work, the perception, the self-awareness. All of these things within you have to shift first. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so I think that's a really important point, Chris, that oftentimes people follow instructions to a T, but they don't recognize that very thing that you're talking about.
Well, I mean, that's part of what put me here. You know, I was doing all these programs, since I was 17, because I dropped out of high school and was told that I would never amount to anything. And that's part of the motivation of why I followed my heart and chased after everything with such passion, was because I had something to prove to my authoritarian parent figures who allowed me to make my own choices, but also held me to a standard that I couldn't reach. Which always made me feel like I was disappointing them in some way, because even if I was perfect, the comment would be, well, you'll do better next time. You got first place. That's great. Well, you're going to do it easy. It'll be easier for you next time. There was that standard of level of proficient effectiveness. And, and it's taken a lot of years for me to be okay with just not getting anything done, other than just working on myself. And like, as those fears of insecurity or anxiety come up and say, oh, you need to be doing all these things, because, if you do all these things, you'll get X, Y, Z results. And if you're unhappy with the lifestyle, as far as the materialization of it, not the actualization of it from within, because I can really appreciate where I am and how far, I've come with my family and my friends, and, really trying to work hard on rewriting my family lineage as far as the masculines were concerned, about being high material achievers. In the, my grandfathers were healers. One grandfather was a chiropractor, and he was he was the president of every board in the city. He was super, about that. And, the other one was president of a hospital, and, that was what his life was geared towards. And when I listened to my dad's stories, what he taught, and my mom's stories, about what they wish they had the most of was presence with their family. Even though that they had the things and, whatever, it was that time. It was sitting around, having a cup of coffee, a conversation. It wasn't necessarily about going and doing things all the time. It was about being with each other. And it took me a really long time to understand, like, true love is just the willingness to be together, and not have to do the things, not have to go to the movies, not have to go get distractions, not having to do all these external things, but just being together, having a simple meal, going for a walk together, those types of things. Like, man, that level of connection is amazing. Versus, my old way of life was like, what bar are we going to? Who's got the best entertainment, and let's go have a good time, and, my high school friends, when I would bump back into them like 20 years later, would be talking to my new people that were around me or whatever. And they'd say, yeah, the story with Chris was, and it happened, that was in the honeymoon, I forget the name of the movie now, was Zach Galifianakis, or however you say his name, and Bradley and all those guys. But the guy's like, but did you die? Like, we did all these things, but did you die? Like, close, but no, we didn't die. We had these crazy, wild, experiences that, you tell people and they look at you like, how is that even possible? It's just the way my life was until, in my 30s, when I had my first, huge egoic death. I had a bunch of different ones throughout my life. My first big shift was when I was 17, and I felt like a victim in life. And I remember just crying because I was on all these antidepressants. I couldn't feel anything. And I wanted to feel something. Like it was nice not feeling the pain and the depression and the things that I was experiencing as a 17-year-old kid growing up the way I did. But at the same time, I didn't feel anything. I was numb. And I remember sitting there crying and screaming, like, I just want to feel something. And a few weeks later, I killed myself. And that woke me up to, hey, you care too much about you and not enough about the whole. You're focusing too much on your thoughts, your feelings, what you want, and you're not including other people's. And that really helped shift my perspective in many ways. And, that led me to entrepreneurship, which led me to the spiritual path, because I thought I was being spiritual by being of service, by providing valuable service to people, helping them obtain and live the lives that they wanted to live in the ways that I was doing it. But at the same time, I wasn't being fulfilled spiritually because I was lacking within myself. I was lacking compassion for myself, and thought that I had to be something for someone, otherwise I was nothing. And that's been a really interesting process of unlearning. You were going to say, Larkin?
I wasn't. I was actually really just enjoying listening.
Okay. I thought you were going to chime in, and I was like, oh, let me wrap it up.
No, I think it's a very, I think it's important to note, and I hope that people are listening, even on the rebroadcast, that people are really listening to the journey, because, there's so many aspects to us and what is significant to us at a particular time in our life based on what we learned or didn't learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have easily continued to go through life as you had at age 17 and not had that. And yet what seems like, it was a potential tragedy, almost losing your life experience here in this world, what it seems like was a terrible choice. Actually, it was one of those things where sometimes we have to make the bigger mistakes or experience the greater suffering to have an awakening. Mm-hmm. We don't have to. Let me be clear about that. I am not encouraging anyone to go out and make unsafe choices.
Right.
All I'm saying is in life, there's always these opportunities for us to learn and wake up. And when we don't get them, we struggle more, we feel more stuck, we have greater suffering until we're cornered and we're pushed to a point, or things start to happen, that seem, just completely out of our control, that we then have to respond to in order to shift our perspective. Mm-hmm. Which kind of takes us back to what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, where if you recognize these things, then you can make a different choice before it gets worse. And it's interesting, Chris, listening to your journey and seeing how the different components are in there, how the way you were, and then, that stronger sense of community then, one of the reasons why you're so focused on that, why it's such a priority to you. Mm-hmm. And you guys will find that as well as you, from the inside out, as Chris is obviously living from the inside out, as you guys are living from the inside out and you pick up on these lessons, you'll find that your priorities shift. Chris very clearly shared, what shifted for him there. Mm-hmm. And I would like to share with everyone that I think whatever our priority is either has something to teach us or it's something we need to work on. A lot of people think whatever your priority is, that's your life mission. That's what you're going to feel passionate about. But it's not always. Sometimes it's leading you in a direction that's just going to teach you a lesson.
Right.
but it's always leading towards something that is for your greater good. And your greater good is a part of the greater good. You know,
Right.
that's something that we are, that's something we're lacking. It's interesting. Tom and I went to see a movie 2 nights ago, and some of you may disagree with it. It's kind of humorous, Chris, because you were just talking about people complaining about the introduction, the opening of the ceremonies for the Olympics, and maybe I'm going to sound like that type of person. But you know, in the movies, they always have. We haven't been to a movie theater in a couple of years, but they always have these big, commercials. And they had a Nike commercial, which maybe is on regular screen. I don't know. But it was a long Nike commercial, and it was taking all these athletes. And the idea was, am I a bad person? The real concept is, am I a bad person for wanting to be first? Am I a bad person for wanting to win? Am I a bad person for wanting to be the best? Am I a bad person? And it went over all these things that perhaps to younger generations, they wouldn't pick up on this because it's already kind of the way of our mentality. But Tom and I were horrified because I have a lot of training in subliminal messaging. And there was both non-subliminal and subliminal messaging in this commercial. But essentially, it was going back to what you were saying you outgrew, Chris, what you were saying you woke up from. Mm-hmm. It was redirecting it towards, it's okay to stomp all over everyone to be first. It's okay to use people to get what you want. Mm-hmm. It's okay to do whatever you have to do to be the best. It's okay to not, care about anybody else as long as you're getting what you want and you're the best of the best. I'm not saying don't be the best version of you. I'm not saying don't be an Olympic athlete. I'm not saying don't try to do your best. But the essence of the commercial, and I will not be buying from this company again, but the essence of the commercial, although it is kind of widely accepted now, was it's okay to run all over everyone as long as you're first and you get what you want, which encourages everyone to the hell with everyone else, get what you want. And you can see it in lines. You can see it in, when you're driving on the street. You guys hear me complain about that all the time. And the point I'm trying to make here is, for anyone who thinks that's actually going to be the epitome of your success, that way of living will make you happy and fulfilled and abundant and joyful and loved, it won't. It won't. It's really one of the biggest lies of our society. And I see it pouring in with coaching clients because they have a million reasons why they want to come and learn to manifest. When it comes down to it, we're being fed just to want what we want, and that's okay. And however we have to get it is okay. And my heads up here, my friends, is when you're living authentically from the inside out, you don't do that. And what you give out comes back. So let's not forget that, because you may initially say, wow, it works. You may, in a commercial or social media, look at idols that you have and say, wow, that works. They had to stomp on a lot of people to get there. They had to beat a lot of people, but it worked. But I have a secret for you. It really doesn't work. It appears to work, and it's marketed to work. But one cannot actually sustain living like that and be happy with themselves, enjoy life, enjoy the money they have, enjoy the fame they have, enjoy any of that. Essentially, we're all equal humans, and we all have to go back to the basics that innately make us feel worthy, loved, joyful, and abundant. And the same basic principles are true for each of us. Mm-hmm. Kindness, humbleness, focusing on what our goals are, but without doing harm to others. And whenever we're after a goal, an accomplishment, at the sake of anyone or anything else. That means the environment, a bird, another person. Um, we are not doing ourselves any favors. I think that's an important point.
Yeah, it's short-term masculine thinking. It doesn't have any feminine energy that is going to help keep it alive. That life force energy. And as soon as we stop that aggressive energy, because we're probably going to get exhausted somehow, then it all goes away because we stop the energy. It's like the momentum you're talking about earlier. It works for the good stuff and it works for the bad stuff. There's no meaning until we define it as, has meaning, but it's all energy. So, that was the question that really started me on my path about a decade ago, was like, how can I do this more sustainably? How can I do this in a way to where I'm not constantly just grinding away, and not taking the time to actually enjoy life. Not ENGOY, but INJOY. Actually be enjoy while you're going through the process. And not being able to sit back in 20 years and go, oh, I did it. I did what I had to do. People came and went, things were, like for me, authentically, when I hurt somebody, it messes me up big time. Like it's the hardest thing for me to overcome. Like I can hurt myself all the time and I can laugh at myself about it. But when I hurt somebody else, unintentionally, I should say, because there's been times where I'm gonna, and then I didn't feel bad about it. But
it's funny. It's worse when it's not intentional.
Well, I don't know anyone that got in a fight and a fist fight with somebody, which is an intentional act, and then I mean, back in the day, like it brooded, right? Like you kind of got in an argument, and then people were like, "Oh, they're gonna fight at 3:00 today," so you were all prepared for after school because we were gonna get down. And no one felt bad. I mean, we were upset if we lost, but it wasn't,
right.
But the interesting thing, and I was talking to a guy at Sundance about it, he goes, but back then when we were kids, we would pound the crap out of each other. Even as adults at the bar, we'd pound the crap out of each other and then end up buying each other a beer afterwards. Like whatever that was, whatever needed to be worked through, got worked through in that physicality of a moment. And the guy that was probably chipping away, with a little higher ego kind of got humbled a little bit. And then
that is one positive. That is a positive thing though about masculine energy that I actually love. It's the same thing with the geldings. The geldings will get out and they just play. If they have beef with somebody, they bat it out, and then they're best buddies playing together and grazing. Whereas the mares, are holding grudges for years. It's like, oh no, those two mares can never be in the same herd together because they mean business. There's no, there's no lighthearted about it. So definitely that balance is important there.
Yeah, duck energy, right? You just shake it off and you move on, right? But it is interesting, like as we're talking about shifting your reality, how many of us get stuck at somebody didn't treat us the way that we expected them to in one moment, or maybe a series of moments. And because of that, now we deem them dead in our lives, or, as a bad person or anything, and never hold the window open or the door open to find a new awareness. Because I haven't met one person in my whole life that hurt other people that wasn't hurting themselves.
Nope, doesn't happen.
And so if we could actually, with the cognitive awareness, say, this person is intentionally trying to inflict pain on me. Wow, I'm so sorry you're hurting this bad. And whether we can say it out loud, because, I'm sure you say that to some people in certain circumstances, it's probably not going to work very well. But like, why are you so mad? You shouldn't be mad. That's why you're angry. That's silly. That's a silly emotion. You don't need to be angry. But really being able to hold that space within ourselves and really attempt to cultivate the patience, the understanding, the compassion, will lead us, I believe, to a deeper connection than creating a boundary or some kind of safety protection mechanism to keep that polarity away from us. I think it stunts our growth. Unless they are there to just continuously, they refuse to take accountability, any responsibility, not wanting to work on themselves at all. I think that's when you have to say, okay, well, the timing's not right, because that they're just not ready to grow yet. And the more we can identify that within people, doesn't make them right or wrong. It just makes them where they're at. And if we can accept them from that, then we're actually accepting them from a state of love. Because there's a lot of people that I run into on a daily basis, and I just want to shake them awake. And, as they're telling me all their health issues and all the things, and it's like, would you like help, or you just want to complain about it? Because to work yourself off the medications that you're taking, it's going to take this, and this. And until you do those things, then that is going to be your reality. So you're going to have to shift your reality. You're going to have to shift the way you show up in life. You're going to have to shift what you're putting in your body. You're going to have to shift what you're listening to with music and what TV shows you're watching and all the different things to give you the best possible outcome of creating newness, because only in new beginnings can we really get a fresh start without carrying the baggage of our past. So that was good.
It was good.
Sorry, I gotta give myself a pat for that one.
It's true. It's like I said, Chris, you're on fire today here. And and I really hope that the people that need to hear this today listen to it, because as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, if you want a new reality, you have to create a new personality.
Mm-hmm.
We have to transform from the inside out. And I think you have, you've hosted such a beautiful and important, powerful show today. And those of you that do catch this broadcast, listen to it more than once, because the first time we hear things, it just doesn't, we just hear it. It's usually the second time we hear things, or the third or fourth or fifth time, it really resonates with us. And there was so much wonderful ground covered here today. Thank you, Chris. You really were in alignment with this topic today.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful. I learned a lot by listening. And we want to share. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Don't forget, we have a YouTube page that, Enhancing Your World. You guys, if you subscribe, can help us to grow that and sort of spread the word. Chris, you have a page and a group now?
So the Enhance Your World show has a Facebook page and a YouTube page. And it's also broadcast on my website, enhancingyourworld.com. You can get the links on yours as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if you used to have a group, Enhancing Your World.
I do have the group, Enhancing Your World Enhances Our World, Facebook group. Yeah.
I knew you changed it a little bit, but that's a great group as well. Oh, I can't hear you. Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm not saying anything.
Oh, it must have been a delay. Oops. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, but we're sharing that YouTube page, guys, and then of course, I think, I don't know if my pages are listed up here, but you can find my coaching page at mypowerfulchoices.com or my psychic medium page at Larkin Spiritual Interpreter, Psychic Medium Spiritual Interpreter page. And I have groups, but you can find those through the pages, and larkinsreadings.com. So, but I would just encourage you, if you like the show, if you're getting things out of it, subscribe to the YouTube page, find Chris's Facebook page, Enhancing Your World, and continue to join us. We have some wonderful things in the works, and we want to thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks so much. Have a lovely day, and see you next week on Tuesday at 12 p.m.
See you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.